Greg Krohm and I took one of our annual backpacking trips to Yellowstone in August of 2018. I think this was our 9th year of taking a backpacking trip. We flew to Billings, Montana from Madison. We rented a car, stayed overnight there, and got our last-minute supplies like bear spray and fuel for the stove. The next day, we left Billings very early in the morning for a 4-hour drive to the Grant Visitor Center in Yellowstone National Park to pick up our backcountry permits. We started our hike at the Heart Lake trailhead. We walked about 10 miles to the east to our campsite on Heart Lake. Stayed there overnight. The next day, we left the campsite and hiked to the top of Mount Sheridan, and then descended Mount Sheridan and camped our second night at a different campsite on Heart Lake. The third day we were going to explore the hiking around Heart Lake, but due to a dramatic change in the weather, we hiked out the third day to the trailhead. Our first day we had beautiful weather. It was in the 70s and clear skies, and we walked from the trailhead toward Heart Lake. One of the very interesting things we saw is we had to go through a geyser basin where there were hot springs, and we didn't see any erupting geysers, but there's a lot of activity. So long downhill from the geyser basin to Heart Lake, stopped for a few moments at a ranger station there. No one was there at the time, and then proceeded to our campground. It was one of the nicest campgrounds we could imagine. We were very much alone, nobody in sight, a beautiful view of Heart Lake, and we started setting up camp. At that point, the wind really started picking up, as you can see, and nice clear skies, but we should have recognized that we were getting some major weather changes. Our second day started off very leisurely. We got up, had breakfast. We planned an easy hike, maybe 4 or 5 miles to our next campsite, and then just some exploring. And on the third day, we were going to climb Mount Sheridan. But to our good fortune, a ranger walked in as we were eating our breakfast, and we chatted with her. She was very friendly and helpful. We explained our plan, and she said, "Well, let me check the weather." And she checked on her radio and came back and said, "If I were you, I would go and climb Mount Sheridan today." And we asked why. And she said, "Well, the following day, the weather is not looking very good, and they're predicting snow." So we took her advice, quickly packed up, marched about 4 miles to where we dropped our packs, took a small ascent pack, and began our hike or climb up Mount Sheridan. Both Greg and I said to each other later that when we looked up at the mountain, we were not sure we were going to make it, but we persevered, and the wind got increasingly strong as we climbed. At one point, the gusts were stopping us in our tracks, but we made it to the top. Beautiful view. We felt great being up there, and very windy, but the skies were reasonably clear. We then headed down and hurried to our next campsite to get all set up before dark. Our third day hiking was a challenge. Our problem started the night before when it started raining just as we were going to bed. We were also having some hearing and communication problems due to dead batteries in Greg's cochlear implant. It rained steadily all night long with high winds. While we were drying our tent, our packs got soaked even though they were hung in a tree. We woke in the morning and the temperature was dropping. We decided to hike out rather than spend another day at Heart Lake. We packed up our wet gear, started hiking. It got colder as we gained altitude. We had about 10 miles to go. The rain turned to sleet and then finally to snow. The temperature dropped to around 37 degrees, and we were miserable. Greg was soon soaked to the skin. We had to hike our 10 miles without stopping, knowing that hypothermia was a risk. We made the trailhead, the car started, we got warmed up. We were fortunate to find a room left at the Yellowstone Lake Hotel. We had a couple of well-deserved beers at the Yellowstone Lodge and a hot meal, and we were very glad to be warm and dry. The weather change had cut our hiking short by one day, but that gave us an extra day to explore some of the other sites in Yellowstone. We had a beautiful day. The front had gone through. It was cool, but we had nice bright sun and enjoyed the sights of Yellowstone. Here are a few of the pictures.